What is happening, everybody? We're doing another little race recap from the World Cup that recently went down in Leogang. Now, first of all, big round of applause for Loic Bruni. The man is on a mission this year. He can't be stopped. He has gone first, second, and first. And I think this one was a big statement that he put a bunch of time into everyone. Again, last man on the hill. You saw him in some interviews in practice struggling a little bit in the morning. You notice he doesn't like the wet and slippery conditions, but then it is funny how he actually pulled back the most amount of time and was the fastest in the bottom woods that he was complaining about earlier in the morning. Obviously, the benefit of qualifying first is you have the most amount of time for the track to dry up. Obviously, you can get unlucky sometimes with late showers in the afternoon, but timed this to perfection, ended up going last, getting the best conditions possible and ending up with the win. But he's gonna be a hard man to beat this year. Like, you just see the confidence of him and how he's just consistently riding to his best ability. And I think this is probably the best he's come out swinging ever. So definitely a hard man to beat. We'll start in the juniors and then we'll go through to the elites. Erica van Lumen, she won the junior women and she actually put a lot of time. She put 4.7 seconds into second place. And Heather Wilson, who's been super consistent, she ended up third, which is cool to see the consistency of her still going on. In the junior men, unfortunately, Asa Vermette crashed in the stump section before the woods. He just unclipped his foot, got a bit loose, and then, it was all over. It's one of those spots where you know how important it is, so sometimes you can kind of get in your own head leading into it, and if you mess up that motorway, it's so crucial to carry speed for another 30 something seconds of track. So unfortunate to see Asa go down. He is human, he does make mistakes, he's still learning, he's still finding his feet. But Max Olrand, I really need to get better at these names, hey, but he's on commensale. He ended up winning and he just beat Dan Duet. So Danger Bomb was in second. He now takes over the leader's jersey. So it's cool to see this racing where you've got someone like Ace that's got this hype, but it can all change so quickly. And then obviously someone else can jump in for how consistent these other riders are. But the junior racing just all over is, it's been really cool. And it's just good as well that we can see it on YouTube. They're actually streaming it free on YouTube. So if you want to go check that out, it's cool racing. And it just gives the fans an opportunity to see these riders progress and become these races that then you can follow in the elite ranks. It was so hard for, I guess, fans to follow these juniors like Thibaut Deprella, who would go and win all the junior races and then he would just do so well in elite. And everyone's like, who is this kid? We've never seen him race before. Obviously, the diehard fans can check the results and look at that. But if you're not a diehard fan, it's kind of hard to get involved and invested when you haven't actually seen the person race ever. So hats off to the UCI and everyone for putting it on YouTube so we can actually follow along. But it's going to be exciting racing, and it's exciting to see these times that these guys are putting down are actually so competitive, even with the elite guys. So there's definitely a lot of good form coming out of the junior ranks. Now at Leogang, it was it's funny in my pre-race show I talked about how it's pretty standard that every year you get the dry track walk, you get a wet first day. Qualifying is normally still a bit slick, but it starts to dry up by the end of it. And then on race day, it's normally good. Unfortunately, you had a big downpour on Saturday night. So the track was a little bit slippery, a little bit destroyed. And you can see how that really can affect people, because it's I think it's great they don't do the semis on the finals day, so you have that time to progress again and kind of find your feet. You don't have to just go straight into it. I think it was dangerous for riders had to do those 2 runs on race day because of how quickly you had to be up to speed again. And obviously when it's wet and changing, it's hard. So at least it gives those riders a little bit more time to kind of understand how to push their limits and how they can actually progress into their race run. They just have to focus on that one run. But we'll go through some of the results. I was happy this week. I had some good picks in the fantasy league, which I was stoked about. But in the women, Vali Höll absolutely smoked everyone. She put 7.1 seconds into second. That was Anna Newkirk. I actually took her off my fantasy league last minute and put in third place, which was Myriam Nicole. So I was happy to switch it, but we could have got a few more points then. It's good to see her back as well after having such bad luck in with her injuries and coming back and everything. Like, she did an interview after the race, and you could see how emotional she was to actually finally be back where she knows she can be. So I think she is one of the best women World Cup racers of all time, and it's cool to see how they can just come back, and then it looks easy when they do it, but you've got to realize it is a lot of mental strain to come back from injuries and miss seasons and miss all these races and come back and even just fight to be on the podium and at the pointy end. So super cool to see her back up there as well. Even Marine Cabarrou was in 5th. So a lot of time, like 9 seconds back in 5th, but cool to see her getting her consistency back and her podiums. And after coming off a win in Poland, I'm sure she's going to keep building on that and keep doing well this season. So it was really cool to see. For the men, this was a cool podium. This was a really cool podium to see. I saw that Finn Iles obviously had a big crash, and it was one of those things where I saw Ben Cathro talk about this, and it's almost he talked about a rider's not fit enough to compete and do all these runs, and how draining that is going into finals day with obviously the quali, the semi, and then racing the final. But because Finn crashed, he just opened the gate for the quali and the semi, which he rested his body, but he also rested his mind a lot, because doing full out race runs, it's hard, it's draining, just mentally draining. Physically, it's not that much, but mentally, it definitely wears you down. So he obviously was injured and was hurt from the crash, but then he actually missed these 2 races, which I think mentally would help you so much. It's just that extra strain that is taken off you. But super impressive to see him come back when he wasn't even sure if he was going to race, and then almost winning the thing in 2nd. So hats off to Finley. That was really impressive. We had Lachlan Stevens-Mcnab backing up his run that he had in Poland when he was on the way to win his first World Cup. He was up at the 3rd split, unfortunately, before crashing on and off camber. He's come back swinging and landed himself in 3rd with 3.1 seconds back, it's so good to see. Lockie's one of those riders that is all or nothing all the time. He actually scares me when I watch him ride, because he's just all out. He's throwing everything at it, and obviously that's what you need to do to be at the top. But he was having trouble with obviously big crashes and injuries and setbacks. So now that he's kind of found his feet and he can do those runs consistently, and obviously had a crash last week, but he's kind of fine-tuning that line of kind of madness and consistency and smoothness. So it was cool to see him on the podium. He's a guy that I think is just going to keep showing up, and he's going to keep causing people a lot of trouble, because now that he's kind of found that groove and he's done it, like he feels the confidence of, I can be one of the top guys, and I am one of the top guys. So I think he's really one to watch this year. He was in my fantasy league as well, so I was pumped with that. O'Callaghan was in 4th, which is good to see, 3.2 back. He's another guy that's super interesting. He never looks that out of shape. He never looks like he's pushing super hard. He's a very consistent, clean rider, and it just seems like he's having fun. Like him and Ronan Dunn, the Irish boys, it's cool to see how far they've come in such a short time. I remember chatting to these guys, and they were the guys just having fun, getting loose. They're having good results, but now they've kind of broken through that top 30, top 20 mark, and now they're just fighting for wins and podiums every weekend. And I think when the conditions are that little bit greasy, if not wet, Ronan and O'Sheen are the guys to watch out for. I was talking to my mate before about Val d'Isole. If Val d'Isole is at all wet or a bit sketchy, I think those 2 boys are real danger men going into that. I think Val d'Isole is one of the tracks that no one wants to see it wet. But if it is, there's certain riders that can really figure that out and just push that limit, but still stay in control. My boy Benoit Coulange rounded out with the top 5 in 5th with 3.2 back. So him and O'Sheen were right on the bubble of each other. I think it was like 0.03 of a second. So super tight racing between those 2, which really cool to see that they're laying it down. There's so many top guys going down at the moment in the elite field. Andreas, another guy in the fantasy league, that's a good pick, but he was in 6th. I think he's, I don't know, it's watching his run and how he's riding. He's obviously riding really good, but it just kind of maybe lacks that intensity that we've seen out of him in the past. So he's obviously building back, but he's one of those guys that when he finds that groove and gets back into what he knows he can do, I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be really fighting for wins. Obviously, coming away with 6 is not bad at all, but I think he wants more, and he can get more. So that's going to be super interesting. I thought Lucas Shaw could have been right up there as well. He obviously saw that he was up at the last split, but then obviously had a big mistake right where it was, almost went over the bars, put him offline, and that set him back a little bit. So he came away in 7th, but he was either going to be fighting for that win or second place. I reckon it was going to be hard to beat Loic at that bottom. He was so quick through there. So it's just crazy how stacked the field is now. Like, you go back to like 20th and you're like, all these guys can podium, all these guys can win. So I'm kind of glad I got out when I did, because, man, watching the race and seeing how hard these guys are pushing, especially those sketchy, slippery conditions, it's just like, oh man, they are going for it. Bernard Kerr had a big mistake right at the bottom. He was looking that he could have been on the podium, but messed up right on that like last corner, which is super awkward as well, man. It's just like this long kind of right hander with all these ruts, and it pushes you wide, and if you mess it up, you lose all the speed to the finish. And there's like a few corners and few straights on the track where if you mess up just a little bit, you lose so much momentum and so much speed that you just can't make that time back. No matter how hard you pedal, no matter how hard you pump, if you come out of that section slow, you're just carrying that slow momentum for like at least 10, 20, 30 seconds. So it's like so many crucial little points on this track that make it so tight and so hard to compete. Troy Brosnan was 9th. I think he wanted more out of it. I think he knew he had more, but just didn't show up on the day. He put up a post saying that there was more there. Tibro DePello was in 10th. Danny Hart 11th. Cool to see him getting form back. Ronan Dunn had a hell of a lot of moments in his run. I think he knew that he got lucky by not even just going down and just getting that 12th position. But I think as well, like I said, he's probably got a lot of pressure after getting the Red Bull helmet, winning Red Bull Hardline, winning the last World Cup. Like, you've got a lot of eyes on you now. And I wonder if that affected the way he was riding and he kind of felt that pressure a little bit, or whether he just had some silly mistakes. It's hard to tell, because like even subconsciously, you don't know how you're going to react to being more in the spotlight. So it's cool to see that he still got a good result, but yeah, a bit of a messy run from him and a bit of messy riding. So him, and same with Amaury Pirion, he almost went down. He had a big moment as well. You've got to be on it so much and pushing so hard, and it's so easy just to have these silly mistakes that can set you back so far by just like the littlest amount of time. But we had Dakota Norton in 14th. I thought Dakota was going to have more, to be honest. I thought he was going to be further up there. He's obviously super good at this stuff with like gaining speed and even these tricky, awkward sections that it's so hard to tell with who's going to do well when it does get that little bit of grease on it, because it's so easy to make a little mistake or a little mess up. Like even Loris Verger, I think he was sitting 4th at the second split, and then he had a mistake as well that put him back to 19th. So there's a lot of guys that had mistakes. Ollie Davis had a crash down the bottom. He was looking for a top 15 result. So yeah, man, it's just tricky. It's tricky at the moment. We've had Laurie Greenland had a big crash and he was out altogether. So there's just a lot of guys pushing that limit and can be going down. So it's going to be interesting to see how like these top guys get shaken up and who can come back and keep fighting. But one of the things I wanted to touch on with obviously how Finn didn't do qualies or semis and how he's hurt, but then did so well. I remember one year I was in Mont Saint Anne, and the first day of practice, I got 6 flat tires and I think I destroyed like 4 rims. So I literally I did one full run on the Friday in practice, and I was really annoyed because I only got one run in, but also from doing that, I never really wore myself out because I was just riding down the side of the track with these flat tires or stopping and kind of looking at lines, which I was annoyed at the time. But then I woke up the next day and the track had gotten so rough. It's classic Mont Saint Anne where it gets so beat up and so rough, and you get beat up. So to go into quali the next day, I felt very fresh. I felt so fresh because I hadn't put my body through 6 to 7 runs that I'd normally do. I only did pretty much half a run, and like obviously you roll down, but you're not using much energy when you do that. So I felt so much fresher going into race day and quali day. So that can play a big factor. Obviously, it's harder to learn the track, but sometimes you don't actually need to learn the track as much as you think you do. Like once you get your lines, it is good to get the reps in, but sometimes like you look at someone like Danny, and by the 3rd or 4th run when he goes into time training, he's pretty much completely up to speed. And his time training run might be 2 to 3, 4 seconds slower than his final race time. So within those 4 runs or those 3 runs, he has found his speed on the track. So realistically, he could do 3 to 4 runs, find his speed, and then chill. Obviously, the track's going to change, lines are going to change, all this is going to happen, but it shows you how quickly you can get up to speed and how you don't need as much time as I think we need. So to see Finn do that and then obviously get second while also having an injury and crashing, it's like, okay, how much do we actually need? Because I think sometimes we get in our own head in our own way by thinking we need to do more, or you change a line because someone else is doing it. And it can snowball down this way where you're mentally using more energy and physically using more energy. So I think if you can kind of taper back a little bit and just kind of smarter, not harder mentality of racing. So especially going to tracks like Fort William, Val de Sol, and even somewhere like Leogang with the wet, where he obviously ruts up and becomes a lot more challenging, is less more, and less can be more in this scenario. And obviously you saw that with Finn. So super interesting there to see how that played out. And I'm just pretty shocked to see someone that just opened the gate and went through can then go and back that up. So yeah, Specialized going the 1-2 and getting team of the day, and Loic, like I said, just finding his feet and finding his form and just kind of untouchable this year. So I think it's going to be hard for people to kind of claw that back. Luca Shaw is now sitting second the overall. So obviously Loic's got a pretty big gap. Vali's also sitting first. Tane is second and Marin is third. Nina was in fourth. In the elite man, Loic Bruni is way out in front with 997 points. In second place is Lucas Shaw, 677. Finn Iles in third, 647. Troy Brosnan in fourth, 621. Ronan Dunn laying it down in fifth. Loris Verger, sixth. Benoit Coulange, seventh. Dakota Norton, eighth. Andreas Kobe, ninth. And Anne-Marie Pirion coming back from injury in 10th. So, like I said, it's an absolute stacked field, and Loic just seems to be running away with it. But like we always know in downhill, that it can change so quickly. And we've seen before with rides like Thibaut Depel, I think back in 2021, he had this roll at the start where he just picked up momentum and he got going, and it was almost like, how are we going to catch this guy? And it came down to the last race in snowshoe, and he just fumbled it, and he obviously blew up his back wheel and then had a crash and broke his wrist. And then Loic came out swinging and won the last round, and he won the overall. So you never want to... You got to wait for the fat lady to sing before you start celebrating. But just going off how he's riding and how good he looks and how consistent we know he can be, he's going to be a hard man to beat. It almost reminds me of back when Sam Hill was racing and he started to get those wins, and you're like, don't let him get too comfortable. Don't let him get too far out, because they feed on that pressure. They love that pressure. Like, you put Loic down last, he's more likely to win than if you put him down 10th, 11th, 5th, whatever it is. It's like if you put all your eyes on this person, it seems to elevate and make them excel as a racer and as a rider. And speaking from experience, I know the more pressure, the more eyes, the more serious the situation was, and it helped me focus in and channel what I needed to do. When I was kind of in the nosebleeds out the back, you don't feel that pressure, you don't feel those eyes, and I felt like I couldn't perform at the level that I should have been. But when I'd qualified in the top 10, or if not second or wherever it was, and it's like, okay, it's go time, I think that's when you find out whether you're not just a good bike rider, but a really good racer. And it's not until you get put in that situation that you can really figure that out. And you can see someone like Loic, and even like Danny Andreas is good at it. Troy is good at it. These top riders, Greg as well, is good at it. When you get put down last and all the pressure's on you, you just kind of shine through. So it's interesting as well. It's mentioning Greg there to see how he's going. Obviously not the season he would have liked to start out with. He's had some big crashes at Fort William, and they're not the best to get going this season. So it's sad to see him not where I know he can still be at. Obviously this may be his last season, possibly maybe next. You never know, but you always want to go out performing the way you know you can. So I hope that he can turn that around, get some good runs on the board, and yeah, find his feet. And if this is the last season or next year, you hope he can go out on a high and not go out trying to puzzle and figure things out. But like I said, it seems like it's a young man's sport at the moment. You got all these guys coming through that are new, that are finding their feet, like Lockie Stevens, Ollie Davis, Remy Meyer-Smith. These guys that are just throwing everything at it, and I know that mindset of being in the situation that they are and how hungry they are to do well. And when you're like that, man, it's hard to compete with those guys. So it's funny, if a guy asked me if I missed it when I was looking at the race, and I miss it until I see it start raining before qualies or race, and then I couldn't be happier that I'm not doing it, because that anxiety that goes into your body when you know this track is going to be so sketchy and these routes are going to be so slippery and you've got to go and perform. I'm happy I'm not in that situation anymore. But yeah, I do miss being around the people, going to the places, and felt the other day that I did miss riding a bike. So I think I might need to get back on a bike soon. I'm actually in talks with a bike company about possibly getting one soon to do some stuff on, do some promotion. So we'll let you know how that goes, and you might see me on a bike very soon. As always, I want to hear what you guys thought of the race. We obviously had Josh Carlson and Aaron Gwynn on commentary. It was cool to see that. They seemed to work well, build hype into the race. They bounced off each other well. They had a lot of experience. They've obviously got a lot of knowledge that they can share. So I felt like that flowed quite well. So that was really cool to see. So shout out to Carlson and Gwynn for being on the commentary. I'd like a bit more excitement, I think, at the end of runs. I think it's hard to obviously beat what Rob brought to the table with his excitement, but I think just go crazy, yell, scream, lose your voice, go hard, and I think that's what the people really like. But it is a tricky thing to do when you're in the moment on the thing. You're trying to give information, you're trying to be hype, you're trying to be all these things. So, but thought it was really well done and really cool. But yeah, let me know what you thought. Let me know what you think going into Val de Sol next weekend. There's no break. We're going straight into another round. I think if it's wet, O'Sheen, Ronan, they're going to probably lay it down. Loris is an absolute Val de Sol specialist. Same with Andreas Kobe. He's gonna be hungry for it. And as always, Loic Bruni, I'm sure he's going to be there. Finn's obviously got some confidence coming back now, so he's going to be fighting for it as well. And yeah, I'm excited to see how it all pans out. Lachlan Stevens-Mcnab's probably going to throw it down again. Guys are on fire. But yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know your picks. And let me know what you thought about the coverage, the commentary, everything that's happening in the UCI World Cup right now, and what you want to see more of. Cheers, guys. Love you a lot, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.